Deportation Content by Andy Savana. Chapter 4. It turned out that me and Dale's temporary setup was a bit more than that. I didn't have the courage I thought I did to run out and explore as an undocumented citizen, and he wasn't so cruel as to throw me out. Given the state of the world and the fast approaching eventuality he would be in line for deportation himself, I wouldn't have considered it cruel. As it was, when the trucks did their rounds that grew more and more sparse lately, Dale held his own. As nice as it had been to not be in El Salvador with my family, the isolation that resulted had taken a bit of a toll on me. Dale was cool to talk to, but I missed my mom and dad. I hadn't talked to Mal in a month, and I wondered if she even knew where I was. I wasn't an idiot. I knew me and her weren't trending in the best of directions. Those long, silent stares off to the sides as I recounted movies to her in the lead up to my grand escape did not go unnoticed, but I was a bit of a romantic. Early 2000s romantic comedies held a special place in my heart. Their sweetness and humor always lifted my spirits. You Got Mail, 2 Weeks' Notice, A Knight's Tale, all great love movies. I enjoyed knowing that even if you were a corporate drone working toward putting a love interest's small mom-and-pop shop out of business, or you weren't really born to royalty, love would prevail. It gave me hope. Something to latch onto. That same hope made it tougher, though. Made me miss her more. With how tenacious Donovan had become, it felt like too much of a risk to reach out and have him track me down. They assign one person to a 10-square-mile area, Dale had informed me early in my stay. They have a quota. If they don't meet it, they lose their jobs, because they've apparently caught all the illegal immigrants. I feel like I've seen less and less of them patrolling lately, I would say. How many more of them are left? Dale would reply. Just you, really. The whole neighborhood is empty. That much had become obvious since before I found myself in his closet for half the day. Before my dad was taken away, the roar of trucks before the break of dawn from the refinery workers had disappeared. The corner store that was fixed at the front of the neighborhood only lasted a couple of months into the deportations before shutting down. Even the fire station took off every other day to save money. This wasn't some Hispanic hideout either. I happened to be Hispanic, but Mr. Cheng was deported because his dad overstayed a student visa. Something about the communists not being good for his health. Svetlanas were all deported. They were actually all here illegally, so I guess I would call that fair. Still, they had been a vibrant part of the community for years, and no one seemed to have a complaint about them that warranted rounding them up and shipping them off. Although, with due respect, they lasted longer than my dad, so whatever paperwork they forged had to be of a high quality. You should have asked me to see if I could get a hookup, Dale said as we watched them be rounded up. You have to tell me these things before they get deported, I replied. In fairness, he did wait until it was just a bit too late. I'll find someone else who can do it, Dale promised. I'm going to need it soon, too. Regarding his status, one day I asked, where would they even ship you to? I heard they do DNA testing to trace back your roots and then send you there. It was tough most days. The only thing me and Dale could really talk about were the deportations. New TV shows slowed to a crawl. The movie industry was obliterated. Once all the backlogged releases came out, the only selection of new films was foreign. Hell, even the news itself became scarce. Systems and apps and websites struggled to be maintained. All that really remained were talk shows on public access television and whatever people streamed from overseas, if you could ever get the internet functioning properly. Just days and nights of lying around, waiting for the other shoe to drop. If watching paint dry was boring, imagine watching dry paint flake. The loneliness never stopped stacking up, raising concerns about Mal and my parents' well-being. But like all isolated men of my age, I turned to the one thing that put me in the same realm of like-minded individuals without having to seek those people out in person. Podcasts. And if you already know the story, then shut your mouth with your podcasts cause radicalization nonsense. A lot of other things happened too. The laptop's glow was the only light in the room, throwing a ghostly pallor over my face as I sat hunched. To say there was a bubble in the market for podcast at the time would have been an understatement. The job markets were terrible in many places where people were sent. The only way some of these people held any hope of consistent meals was to pick their favorite milk crate and perform their best soapbox rendition. To be straight up with you, once you heard one deportation story, you kind of heard them all. At least, the variety that seemed compelled to the podcast product. I needed something a little more visceral and adjacent to my situation. I had not been deported, and I did not plan to be deported. "Friends," Exceed's voice crackled through the speakers, "remember, the shadows are thick, but our spirits are thicker." I smirked, despite myself. This was like a generic reel broadcast from the early aughts video games, but maybe that was why it felt so comforting. It was called Echo Chamber, and Exceed broadcasted every day of the week. He was entertaining enough that even Dale had picked up on listening to him on the way home in the mornings. He said he listened to stay informed about the nation's heartbeat, but a plethora of other less dramatic podcasts covered the same news. Hiding away had pushed me to a brink I never knew existed. It was the kind of place where you started wondering if you were actually there, or if you've become some background character in your own life story. But here was Exceed, somehow seeing through the fog, addressing the unseen with the ease of calling out to an old friend across a crowded room. "Sam?" you might ask, because let's face it, you're in my head now, aren't you? Why does this echo resonate with you? Well, dear listener, when you've spent months playing hide and seek with the Federal Immigration Unit, words like Exceed's numbed the anxiety. You wanted someone to echo your desires. And as far as I could tell, I was the victim here. "Each voice that rises against the tide," Exceed continued, "is a testament to our refusal to be erased from the narrative. We will not be footnotes in someone else's history book." "Amen," I whispered. "Your stories matter," Exceed said, as if they could peer straight into my soul, past the self-imposed barriers and protective sarcasm. "Let your truth ring out," Exceed urged. "Search out your truth and those that believe you. You are not alone. You just need to find justice-minded individuals like yourself, those who would act on which they spoke." Was that a call to action? I asked. I'd done enough basics of my business degree to know that every pitch needed a call to action, so I recognized one when I saw it. Exceed wrapped up this segment by mentioning some food delivery service that sponsored this episode, and I pulled out one earbud, letting the other dangle as Exceed's segue mixed with the hum of silence around me. I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight, and couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. "Find justice-minded individuals like yourself," Exceed's voice lingered, "an offer, or perhaps a challenge." Exceed's deep and soothing voice interrupted my attempt to understand their words, saying, "When we get back from this break, we want to hear from you on the front lines." Risky was a word that had taken on new dimensions lately. Listening to Echo Chamber was risky, but it was also a lifeline. Exceed's message, their relentless pursuit of truths everyone else wanted to bury, felt like a dare I was born to accept. Each syllable whispered rebellion and connection. I wasn't a naive schoolchild. I knew there was a commercial element to this. Being a person of the people, especially deported people, was an easy way to get engagement from across borders. Still, it took gall to be so in the government's face, and even the will of the majority. Majority. Occasionally, I had to remember that this was what many people wanted. It's what got these politicians elected. Kind of took the wind out of my sails. My finger hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking on the screen. Call into the show? The Federal Immigration Unit wouldn't appreciate my cameo on a controversial podcast. Heck, they'd love to use my voice as evidence. Exhibit A in the case against Sam Edward, the guy who just couldn't lie low. Reminded me of all those people who escaped to Mexico after killing someone, but just had to make a call home to their mom. Would my voice be a beacon or a shipwreck? I snorted at the thought, a mix of skepticism and adrenaline warming my chest. There's nothing quite like contemplating civil disobedience before breakfast, was there? What time was it? My sleep schedule had gotten all turned around since Dale worked overnight. Breakfast at 8 in the evening? Double meat burger with chili fries. All right, Exceed, I said to the static-filled silence. Let's see what you can do. My finger descended, a small motion that might just change the current of my life. The phone number glared at me from the laptop screen, digits like prison bars. I could almost hear the click-clack of handcuffs in sync with the rhythm of my heartbeat. But then there was Exceed's voice. Just a memory now, but soon. I drew in a breath that tasted like dust and old coffee, my finger finally tapping the call button. Please hold, the robotic voice on the other end mocked before leaving me hanging in a void of silence. The dial tone buzzed like a fly that sneaked into the room on a hot summer day, each pulse a reminder of just how ridiculous this all was. Echo, you're on air. Welcome to the show. Exceed's voice broke through the static, warm and rich as melted chocolate. It was a sound that could make you believe in sunrise during the darkest hour of night. Hi there, Echo. Exceed. Big fan. I cringed at my stammer, my words running over one another as my tongue paced back and forth against my molars. I'm River. River, love the name. Tell us your story, they encouraged, curiosity lacing their words like vines reaching for sunlight. Right, well, I paused, scrambling for the right script in my mental Rolodex of movie scenes. You ever seen The Shawshank Redemption? Feels like we're all Andy Dufresne, digging through walls with our little rock hammers, hoping to find freedom. Ah, a cinematic metaphor. I'm intrigued, Exceed played along, a smile audible in their voice. So, what's behind your wall, River? Family, mostly, I confessed, the word feeling heavy yet hollow in my chest. We've been targeted by the Federal Immigration Unit. My grandpa, he came here with nothing but hope, you know? Now it's like that hope's got a price tag, and we can't afford it. Hope should be free, River, they said, a gentle defiance threading through their tone. What would you say to those who built these walls around you? Guess I'd tell them that walls aren't just physical, right? They're in our heads, too. And what they don't get is that every time they push us down, they're actually giving us the dirt we need to stand taller. Powerful stuff, Exceed exclaimed, their laughter tinged with respect. You're creating ripples already, River. Keep going. Keep fighting. Will do, I said, a grin sneaking onto my face despite the danger. Stay safe, River, were Exceed's parting words, a life raft tossed into turbulent seas. One more thing, too. Make sure you're doing your part to find like-minded individuals. This is not a fight that can be won by yourself. That was absolutely a call to action. Of course, was all I responded before we became disconnected. I hung up the phone and slumped back into my chair, still buzzing from Exceed's words. It was like I had just sprinted a mental marathon. Each step pounding away the cobwebs of isolation had muddled my brain's ability to think. The glow from the computer screen seemed softer now, less like the cold eye of some silent watcher, and more like a companion in the dim room. Hope should be free, Exceed had said. And just like that, their voice had woven through the wires and Wi-Fi signals to wrap me in a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been shivering without. They got it. They really got it. No judgments, no half-hidden winces of pity, just a shared defiance against the walls we both knew too well. My chest felt lighter, as if their understanding had lifted some of the weight off my ribs, allowing me to breathe a sigh of relief. Validation washed over me in waves, and for a fleeting moment, I entertained the notion that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. And then, silence settled around me like humidity after a rain shower in the summer months. The podcast continued to play, but I had tuned out, lost in the aftermath of my confession. My fingers drummed an erratic beat on the desk, echoing the rapid thump of my heart. What had I done? The cocktail of emotions that swirled within me was intoxicating. A raw, new purpose pulsed through me, a fierce energy preceding a storm. It was done. I placed the call, releasing my story. The consequences were irreversible. But sitting there in the half-light, amidst the scattered remnants of takeout meals and scattered bullets, I felt the stirrings of something resembling hope. Time to move forward, I whispered to the empty room, a one-man audience to my newfound resolve. I didn't know what the next scene would look like, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't be watching from the sidelines. Not anymore. The thought of being surrounded by people like myself sent a thrill through me, my mind buzzing with the potential for collaboration, innovation, and mutual support. Yes, our community was smaller than before the forced removals, and a sooner awakening would have been ideal, but it was better to act then than never at all. The soft click of the door startled me, yanking me back from my grandiose illusions of some sort of organized resistance movement. Dale stepped into the room, a silhouette against the hallway light, his stocky frame somehow both reassuring and imposing. He shut the door with a gentle nudge on his hip and turned to face me, eyebrows hitched up in that way they did when he was trying not to seem worried. "Heard you making friends," he said, a lopsided grin doing little to mask the concern that danced behind his eyes. I chuckled, despite the tension coiling in my chest. "Have to figure out a way to change the situation," I countered, leaning back in my chair. "You gotta remember who's listening." He plunked down on the edge of my bed, the mattress groaning under his weight. "Exceed's got heart, but that rarely overlaps with brains." "Since when are you the voice of caution?" I teased, though his words sent a shiver down my spine. The thought of the FIU shadowing our every move felt more like a cold draft than a figment of paranoia. "Since my best bud started playing with fire," Dale shot back, all humor drained away. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Just stay sharp. Keep an even head." I sighed, the reality of his warning settling in my bones like the first chill of winter. Hiding hasn't changed anything. I scrubbed a hand over my face, feeling the stubble that had started to feel like part of my identity. Change is one thing, getting caught in the crossfire is another. Dale's voice held an edge, sharp as the blade he kept hidden under his jacket. A reminder of the world we navigated, one where being prepared meant expecting the worst. Okay, I get it," I conceded, meeting his gaze. There was no mistaking the loyalty there, the unspoken promise that he'd walk through hell with a smile if it meant watching my back. "Don't get too carried away, is all I'm saying," Dale said, but his tone softened with each word. "Definitely," I replied, the word landing with the weight of an oath. Dale nodded, satisfied, and moved towards the door. "Good. Now let's grab some grub before your stomach starts barking like a stray dog. My treat." More than his treat, it was my only option. I had no way of making money. The taste of cheap takeout lingered on my tongue, a greasy reminder of our post-revelation meal. Seated again in the dim glow of his home, the room felt smaller somehow, Dale's warnings echoing off the water-stained walls. "You're doing that thing where you look like you're about to solve cold fusion," Dale observed from across the coffee table, his eyebrows arched in mock concern. "Is that what this is?" I chuckled, my fingers drumming a rhythm on the laminate surface. "Just trying to figure out how to keep my head attached to my neck." "Good goal to have," he grinned, but I could see the tension in the way he held his cup, the liquid almost sloshing over the edge. "You're not exactly invisible to the feds. People get real motivated to produce when their job is on the line." "Neither are you," I said. My smile faded as I considered his point. The familiar scent of old wood and fresh coffee swirled around us, a comforting yet pungent cocoon that couldn't quite quell the storm brewing inside me. "True," he conceded, leaning back against the tattered couch cushions. "But I'm not the one painting a target on my back with neon signs." "Neon's a bit loud for my taste," I mused, the ghost of adrenaline already whispering through my veins at the thought of meeting Exceed. It wasn't just about rebellion, it was about being heard, about finding that thread of connection in an increasingly fragmented tapestry. Dale sighed, setting his cup down with a clink. "I get it, man. I do. But you've got to be careful. These aren't times to take unnecessary risks." "Since when has standing up for ourselves been unnecessary?" I countered, feeling the weight of his concern, but unable to fully accept it. The longing for a lifeline, for a sliver of hope amidst the chaos, gnawed at me more persistently than hunger. "Since it can get you shipped off to a place you've never even been," he shot back. "Life's a risk," I said quietly, the decision crystallizing within me. I stood up, feeling the resolve settle into my bones like armor. If I don't do this, if I don't take this chance, then I'm just waiting for them to come for me anyway. At least this way, I'm moving. I'm doing something. Without warning, he pulled a pistol from his waistband and plopped it down on my chest. I almost tumbled back into my seat, but caught my balance before mustering up any sort of response. "Whoa. You willing to use that?" he asked, though I got the vibe he didn't expect a response. My fingers gripped it and raised it with the barrel pointed toward the ceiling. I had little knowledge of guns, but I understood the basics of gun safety thanks to those videos they'd show you in school. More to the point, I don't think I'd ever actually held a gun before. They were so heavy, felt dangerous. Also made me feel bold and like there was real power in my hands. "By the time this is over, that'll be the only thing that makes a difference," Dale declared, each of his words punctuated with his index finger stabbing toward the gun. "I feel bad for whoever serves me my deportation papers with expedited departure orders." "I feel powerful with this in my hand," I said, really examining the gun, its grooves, sleek design, and weightiness in my hand. I'd vaguely heard his terrifying proclamation, but those comments were commonplace when talking about being deported. His head bobbed up and down as I spoke and admired the gun in my hands. With a mouthful of half-chewed sandwich, he muttered, "Their guns are bigger," from the side of his mouth. "There's more of them, too," I said, without taking my focus from the beautiful piece of metal in my hand. "Every single day, there will be less people like us," he added. When my interest in the gun finally subsided and I handed it back, there lingered a willingness to push the envelope. "Sounds like we need to get organized," I said. "This makes meeting up with Exceed even more important." "That's a thought," he relented after a long pause. "I guess first step would be setting up a meeting with Exceed," I said, my eyes scanning the room as if there would be some sort of answer as to how in one of the corners. "That's easy," Dale responded, with all of his food stuffed in his cheeks. "Almost as easy as it will be for Donovan to snatch you up once he figures out where you are." "Well, don't pause for dramatic effect," I said, waving my hands in anticipation. "They operate out of the warehouse district off of the Beltway," he answered. "Entire district is full of empty buildings since imports died out. I can stop by there tomorrow and talk to them. I know a guy who does parade floats that knows some painter who knows Exceed." "No," I responded. "I'll do it myself." Dale's chewing stopped, and his eyes hardened. I have to, I continued. I need them to know that I mean it when I say I want to create waves. You think you're the first person to try and gain sympathy with the public? I know I'm not. I'd suddenly grown tired of talking and straightened my back with my fists on my hips. I'll go right now, I declared. Yeah, he said, with a bit of disbelief seeping through his words. Still, he was already writing the address to the area on a piece of paper. Dale grasped his phone just to verify that it was the same time that he had arrived home for the last 4 years. At this time? We've talked about this, I said, as I collected some items. Water bottle, watch, flashlight, a dull pocket knife. Most of the police in this city were second generation at best. I keep to the neighborhoods, and I should be fine. If I'm scared to ride an empty bus, then how well will I do during the middle of the day? You want to take the gun? Dale asked as I put my shoes on. Unsure how to politely decline, I said, not there just yet, he said, putting the gun away as I popped to my feet like a 5-year-old excited for their first day of school. No idea that they would be crying for their mommy as soon as she walked out the classroom and left him alone with 30 strangers. If I get caught, are you going to save me? I asked, trying to make light of the leap I was about to set out on. Well, if I know they got you, I will, he replied. You have to make a big enough scene to be on the news. Then I'll know it's go time. My throat tightened, a painful lump forming as I fought to keep our connection alive, each word a monumental effort. That's good, I forced out, pausing to clear my throat. That makes me feel better. Call me if you end up needing a ride home, he said, essentially telling me to hurry up and get it going. I paused, hand on the doorknob, allowing myself one final reflection. Meeting Exceed could change everything. It could be the lifeline I needed, or it could be the noose that sealed my fate. But standing still, wasting away, that wasn't living. Worse, it wasn't American.